Hello, and welcome to part 3 in our study on America without God. The consequences that America is going through because of its rejection of God. As we ended up in part 2, we looked at some of the things that are going on in this country, of how Satan is attacking this country, and how he's trying to get us to move away from God and lean to our own understanding. We started with evolution, and without re-preaching or teaching all of that, but just the idea that we're not created by God, that there is no deity, that there's no God that we're going to answer to, that we are just a product of chemicals mutating and the survival of the fittest, and all the way down through the line, but that life has no intrinsic meaning to it because we're not created in the image of God. We are just simply a product of evolution over billions and billions and billions of years. This is how Satan is attacking God's creation, how he is attacking this country. Then we looked at how God was removed from government. We looked at the false decision made with separation of church and state. And again, I'm not going to re-preach that. Go back and listen to 2 if you haven't done that, to show clearly how this is not what Thomas Jefferson was talking about. But this is the Satan's way of getting God out of government, to have separation of church and state. And then from that, you see the natural progression downwards, that prayer and Bible reading was removed from schools. The children could no longer pray in school. They could no longer have Bible studies or a Bible in school. And again, the law was written so that there would be no state-established prayer or Bible reading. But again, that got moved into that now, guess what? You can't even pray in school. You can't even have Bible studies. So it started to get distorted. Again, moving to get God out. Get God away from the children. Don't let them be taught about him. Nothing to do in the public school. And then last we looked at how the 10 Commandments were taken out of all schools and taken out of all public buildings. Again, under the guise, the ruse of separation of church and state. And this was what the Supreme Court said about the 10 Commandments. I think this bears repeating because it goes right into what we're going to be looking at next in this series. It was Stone versus Graham, and they said the First Amendment prohibits the mere posting of the 10 Commandments. Not that you can't say them out loud, or you can't just simply have them on the wall. You can't even post them. It's not you can't teach them, I should be saying. You can't proclaim them. Can't even post them. You can't even have them up on the wall. And here's why. If the posted copies of the 10 Commandments are to have any effect at all, it will be to induce the school children to read, meditate upon, perhaps to venerate or respect and obey the commandments. So they're saying if you keep them up there, I'm repeating this because it's important, if you keep them in the schools, the children are going to look at them. Even if you don't teach them, they're going to look at them, they're going to read them, and if they read them, they might meditate on them. They might think about what they're reading. Ooh, what a terrible thing that would be. And then perhaps they might respect what they're reading, and then last of all, they might obey them. They might obey the 10 Commandments. And then they said, quote, this is not a permissible objective. So in essence, they're saying we don't want the school children to read the 10 Commandments. We don't want them to think about them. We don't want them to respect them. And we don't want them to obey them. Guess what? That's exactly what you've got today. I'm repeating that one because it goes right into next of where we are today as a nation, where we are as a country. We've got children growing up. We've got people that are functioning in their lives that they may not even know the 10 Commandments. They're certainly not thinking about the 10 Commandments. They don't respect them, and many of them aren't even close to obeying them. How about thou shalt not murder? We have all this uproar and all this hoopla about what's going on with school shootings and this violence in the schools, and how is all of this taking place, and how can this be, and what's going on with our kids. Thou shalt not murder. Well, we don't want them to even think about that. And if you take it all the way out, we don't want them to obey it. We don't want them to follow that. How about all of the violence? Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Oh, man. What a horrible, horrible situation we would be in if people were following that. That's the lunacy of that decision that was made. That they might read them, they might meditate on them, they might respect them, and they might obey them. That is not a permissible objective, end of quote. So where are we today? We are reaping what we have sown. We've said in essence to God, take your laws, we don't want them. We don't want our kids to learn them, we don't want to follow them. And my opinion, God has said, okay, that's what you want? Go for it. You got it. Now let's see where you go from here. This is what you want to sow? You want to do it your own way and do your own thing? Let's see what you're going to reap. Let's continue on now. Consequences of rejecting God. Consequences of rejecting God in society. Dr. Tracy Munsell, Executive Director of the Cultural Research Center in Arizona Christian University, writes this in June 2020. Quote, our nation is facing a potential moral free fall unthinkable to earlier generations. And, I can attest to that. I'm not 100 years old, but I can remember back when I was growing up, I'd have never thought that this nation would be in the condition it is in today. Many of the things that are going on it didn't enter the mind of most people that this would be happening in the United States of America. They were unthinkable. Let me continue to quote. A majority of Americans today no longer embrace values of honesty and respect for the rule of law, the sanctity of life, and traditional sexual morality when facing moral issues. A majority of Americans no longer embrace values of honesty and respect for the law. They don't embrace the sanctity of life, respect it, or traditional sexual morality. Well, thou shalt not commit adultery. It's gone. Can't read it. Let me continue on with quoting them. Americans are no longer looking to biblical truth for moral guidance and increasingly reject traditional values that have defined us as a nation since our founding. It's the same old thing you hear, oh, that's old-fashioned, oh, that's this, oh, that's that, that's archaic, that's from 10, 20, 30 years ago. There just seems to be this innate thing in people that if it's old, it's bad, and if it's new, it's good. Ain't necessarily so. There's that old saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And the laws of old, certainly the laws of God, are not broken. We've tried to fix them. We've discarded them, and we're making our own new morality and laws that we can follow. Let me continue on. I'm still quoting. Less than 1/3 of American adults rely on religious faith when making moral decisions. Less than 1/3 of American adults rely on religious faith when making moral decisions. They are just as likely to rely on other people or their own personal beliefs, feelings, or experiences. The consequences of rejecting God's truth are undeniable. I'm still quoting. We know that what we believe dictates how we behave, and that's true. Today we are seeing the moral breakdown permeating the culture around us, and it is playing out with devastating consequences in our culture. End of quote. Barna Research says the percentage of adults with a biblical worldview has been sliced in half since 1995. I'm still quoting, the historic foundation of biblical truth and its impact on family, faith, education, arts, and entertainment and public policy is mostly a distant memory. And that's true. That's true. You look at the family and how God ordered the family, structured the family, designed the family. Education, we certainly talked about that. Arts, entertainment, public policy. When you start to consider God in these things, it's a distant memory. Even with television, look at television today. It's absolutely horrendous. It's atrocious. The filth that is on TV today is mind-boggling. The cussing, the swearing, the immorality, the sexual content of it, the destruction of the family, how long that, the father of the family was portrayed as a buffoon, as an idiot, how many that there's single parents. Even that's been, exalted in these days today, that if you're a single parent, that's almost something to be praised. It's almost like a badge of honor. And, people that are single parents because, something terrible has happened and this and that, and they continue on and take care of their family, I'm certainly not mocking that or putting it down. But people who just flat out choose, I don't need a husband. I don't need to have, we don't need to have, I can do this myself, I can this, I can that. I've been out, I'm fooling around, I got pregnant, I don't need to get married, I don't need to have a family, I can do this. That willingly choose this single parenthood thing, there's a problem there. It's getting away from the way God designed the family. And there's years ago, there was a social stigma to that. Not now, because society has changed, society has gotten away. Even I brought up the television. I was watching a show the other day, The Rifleman. Chuck Connors, and who was it? Johnny Crawford. And that goes back into the 50s, I believe that's when it was. And something had happened in the show that got Luke, the young son, got him upset. And he was mad. And at a certain point, he was getting mad at God. He was like, what just happened here isn't fair. It isn't fair, Pa. It isn't right. It isn't this. I don't like it. I'm upset. I'm this and that. And Chuck Connors, Lucas McCain, Mark was the son, Chuck Connors sits him down and says, Mark, I want to talk to you. And he starts talking to him from the Bible. And he starts telling him about the story of Job and how what happened to Job and what God was doing in his life with Job and how Job, all the things that he went through and all the things that didn't seem fair. But when God was working with him and accomplished what needed to be accomplished, and he even brought in how the devil was attacking Job and this and that eventually it all got worked out and God gave him back more than what he had before. Here he's sitting here, it's a Western show. It's not a religious show. It's a Western show, but he's teaching morality. He's teaching the Bible. He's teaching the Word of God. What were those children learning through that show? How many of the shows with Andy Griffith, the morality that he taught with Opie, with his son, Leave It to Beaver, show that gets mocked today. But Ward would always sit down and there would be a moral story. Even television was being somewhat used for good there. And it wasn't perfect, but there was that standard, and here was the father, and here was the taking leadership. It's mocked today. It's missing today. It's gone. Because we don't follow the ways of God. So we've taken the 10 Commandments, we've thrown them out the window. They don't apply. Where are we? Let's look at some of the consequences in the nation today because of what's been done. There's lawlessness. Lawlessness rules the nation today. A disregard, I don't want to say a total, complete disregard, but a disregard for the law. From, as I'm speaking today, in the year 2022, I have to honestly say, from the President of the United States, right on down. a disregard for the law. The law doesn't matter. We cry out today in some aspects with things we'll touch base on, for we need to have a law for this, we do need a law for that, where we already have the law. We're simply just not following it. Here's one of the prime examples. And keep in mind, we didn't want the 10 Commandments. We don't want to listen to God's law. We don't want to do what's right. This is what's going on, and what's the effect on this nation? What are we reaping because of what we have sown? Number one, illegal immigration. And I'm not speaking about this from a political standpoint. And when I mention the president, I don't care if the president was Democrat, Republican, I don't care, independent, whatever else there is out there. Doesn't matter. The simple politics and what I'm talking about doesn't matter. It's the actual action. And it's the disregard for the law, because I'm not simply talking about the president. I'm talking about a lot of governors. I'm talking about a lot of mayors, people in official capacity that are supposed to uphold the law. There's lawlessness here. Illegal immigration by many people, and some of them in leadership, is being tolerated, it's being condoned, and it's even being encouraged. And I'm not talking about immigration, I'm talking about illegal immigration. We've kind of lost that word. We say it, the illegal immigrants, but the word, I sit back sometimes and I go, have they forgot what the word illegal means? This is illegal. It's against the law. We're not talking about immigration, we're talking about illegal immigration. I mean, what? What's so hard to understand about the word is illegal? So leaders we have are ignoring laws that already exist. They're already on the books. Governors establish their sanctuary cities. Mayors establish their sanctuary cities. What they're saying in essence is, you people are illegal. You're coming into this country illegally. You're breaking our laws, but you can come to our city because we're not going to uphold the law. You will be safe here. There are organizations in this country that are established to deal with illegal immigrants. It's through the Department of Homeland Security, it's through ICE, the immigration policies, and they're designed to handle you. We won't tell them about you. We won't hand you over to them. You can come into our city. We'll give you a driver's license. We'll let you vote. Illegal, 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 illegal. And in essence, they're saying, we don't care. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. When the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, allows our borders to be open, and again, I'm not talking politics, but allows them to be open and for people to freely come into this country illegally, they're breaking the law. They take an oath of office to protect the borders of this country. When governors and mayors allow people to come into their sanctuary cities, they're breaking the law. What they're doing is a crime. Minimum, they should be impeached. Minimum, they should be taken. And these are impeachable offenses. They are impeachable offenses. They should be taken out of office, and in my opinion, they ought to be put in jail. They're breaking the law. Don't care. Just completely, totally ignore it. So we allow all of these immigrants to come in. That's what we're sowing. Lawlessness. No respect for the law. See, they might meditate. They might meditate on the 10 Commandments. They might think about it and, they might obey it. We don't want our kids to do that. Well, those kids have grown up and they're leading our country. And it goes down even sometimes to the chief of police, and we're going to look at some of that in a moment. So what are we reaping because of this? And I know I'm going to be giving you a lot of statistics and this and that, but you know what? Rather than just saying this stuff, I'm trying to support it. I'm trying to give you just a glimpse, and everything I'm giving you is a glimpse. This is not an exhaustive study. I'm giving you a glimpse of what we are actually reaping because of what we have sown, in the hopes that we're going to go, wait a minute now, this has got to stop. We've got to get back to God. We've got to get back to His Word. We've got to get back to His law. We're not simply the products of evolution. We are created in the image of God. That's my purpose in putting this together like this and going down this grocery list. It's not just to mesmerize your mind and make your eyes glaze over with facts. It's trying to support and bolster up what we're saying here. So, lawlessness, illegal immigration. What's happening? What are we reaping? Let me go down the list. Crime and murder rate, I'm quoting here now. Crime and murder rate have increased. 2021, report from the U.S. Department of Justice, just last year. Almost half of all the criminals prosecuted in federal courts in 2018 were aliens. Okay? Almost half. These aliens were charged with crimes of drug trafficking, kidnapping, and murder. Now listen, of the 41,000 charged, 41,000 aliens charged with crimes of drug trafficking, kidnapping, and murder, 38,000 were illegals. 41,000, they weren't all, 38,000 were illegals, charged with crimes of drug trafficking, kidnapping, and murder. Illegal drugs abound. We know that. They abound in this country. In fiscal year 2018, the U.S. Border Patrol seized 480,000 pounds of drugs, including fentanyl, marijuana, and meth, on the U.S.-Mexican border. On the U.S.-Mexican border. Drug overdoses fueled by opioids killed more than 70,000 people in the United States in 2017. That's old stats. 2017, with fentanyl overdose deaths doubling each and every year. As I was putting this together, as I was studying and putting these facts and figures together, every day there was something new, sometimes multiple things that I could add. Finally, I had to say, stop. I'm not going to add any more. I've got what I've got, because we could just keep on keeping on and keep on going. But as I was doing this, I was writing this part down here. That very day, 2 illegal immigrants from Mexico were arrested in California. 2 illegal immigrants. They had 150,000 fentanyl pills in their car, worth over $750,000 on the street. 2 guys from the Mexican border. The next day, the DA from this city in California released them. Released them without bail. Lawlessness. Relaxing to stand on crime. And his comment was, they're not really a threat. They need to come back next week. I believe it was on a Tuesday to court. But they're not a threat. I'm going to let them go today, release them without bail. What do you think happened next Tuesday? You think they were there? Hello, rocket scientist. Are you kidding me? They never saw him again. Gone. But that's how loose and lawless we've become. They didn't show up at court. On and on I could go, like I said, with this list. Leaders are rejecting our laws, and they're rejecting and ignoring their oath of office. And they go on every day like nothing is wrong. What is the financial cost of illegals on Americans? Now you hit home even more. What's the financial cost? $200 billion, with a B, $200 billion annually. Here's another law being ignored. Healthcare. The current federal policy prohibits federal tax funding of health care to unauthorized immigrants through Medicare, Medicaid, or Obamacare. There's laws on the books that says using these two things, Medicaid and Obamacare, you can't do that for illegal immigrants. It's against the law. Ha! They laugh at it. They ignore it. Here's some facts. The following was spent on health services on illegal immigrants 1 year. $4.6 billion in federal taxes. $4.6 billion in federal taxes. $2.8 billion in state and local taxes. And another $3 billion through what's called cost shifting. That means you and I, who have health insurance, pay a higher premium to cover the cost of those who don't have health insurance. $3 billion for that. 4.6, 2.8, 3 billion. All going for things that it's illegal to do it for. Public education. This is a 2016 study. That's 4, 5, 6 years old, right? According to this study, quote, the Federation for American Immigration Reform estimated it cost public schools $59.8 billion. That's $60 billion. $60 billion to educate the children of illegal immigrants. 98.9 or 99% of this cost is borne by taxpayers at the local and state level through their property taxes. Lawlessness prevails. We refuse to obey the law, from the leaders right on down. Secondly, an effect. We reap what we sow. Because lawlessness rules. Violence is threatened when people disagree with decisions. We have violent demonstrations. Whenever it seems more and more today, when something happens or a decision is made that people don't like, boom, it's violent. And it's not like people all of a sudden get mad and we're just going to go off and running and do things like a knee-jerk reaction. They threaten violence before it happens. They tell you that if a certain court decision is made, well, there's going to, if we don't like it, if it's not going the way we want it to go, there's going to be violence in the street. There's going to be a price to pay. No justice, no peace kind of thing. We're going to be out in the streets and there's going to be violent demonstrations. If something happens that we don't like, if a police officer shoots someone and he's a color that we think he shouldn't have been shot, well, there's going to be trouble. There's going to be looting and rioting in the streets, and we're going to be burning down buildings and burning police cars and flipping them over. Look what happened recently with the Supreme Court reversal of Roe versus Wade. When that decision, before it was made, was leaked of what it might possibly be, the threats already started. The threats already started. From Chuck Schumer right on down. That if you reverse this and take it away, there's going to be a price to be paid, and it's not going to be good. It's not going to be pretty. There's going to be demonstrations. There's going to be they started demonstrating at the Supreme Court justices' houses, started harassing them in restaurants, and certainly since it's come out that it has been overturned. Now there hasn't been that I'm aware of the violent demonstrations, but we're going to harass you. We're going to get in your face. We're going to this. We're going to that. We don't care. We don't like the decision. And then you get these demonstrations, and what happens? There's looting, there's rioting, there's smashing of windows, they're jumping into stores, they're taking out all kinds of merchandise, which is nothing more than theft. And in many of these cases, what do you have? The mayor is telling the police chief, let them go. Don't go in there, don't move in there. People need to vent. Vent? Vent what? Vent their anger over a decision? It's a joke. It's a joke. Let me give you a little background here. I have my brother, he's retired now. He was a narcotics detective in one of the biggest cities in New York City. I'm sorry, one of the biggest cities in New York. It wasn't New York City, but one of the bigger ones. The capital. I don't know why I don't want to say it, but that's where he was, in Albany. He was a narcotics detective, and he was at a number of these demonstrations that were happening years ago. And he was telling me, as he's sitting there giving me stories and stuff, this was a few years ago, talking, he says, they're rioting and they're looting, and he says, I went up to one of the guys and I said, hey, what are you rioting over? And the guy looks at me and he goes, I don't know. And my brother says, what do you mean you don't know? He goes, I don't know what they're all aggravated about, but it's free money. It's free merchandise. I'm in there getting what I can get. He had no idea what the rioting was. He had no idea what the demonstration was, what it was over, what it was for. He just saw free money. Free merchandise. They weren't getting money, but they were getting merchandise, whether it's clothes, appliances. You see them walking out of the store like this with stuff in their arms, laughing. And the police standing inside. Because they're told to stand down and let them vent. They're not venting. They're out there robbing and stealing. The forces of evil are at work in this country. Satan is behind this stuff. Yeah, there's people, but he's working through people. This is a spiritual battle. Yes, it filters into people. But it is a spiritual battle that orchestrates and organizes and puts these feelings into people. He told me another time, he said they were having riots and they actually, listen to me, this is fact, this is my brother standing, he's looking at it, okay? They were actually bringing in pallets with bricks. Loaded with bricks, wrapped in the wrap that they put around it so things don't fall. They were bringing them in on the forklifts and sitting them down so the rioters could go over, cut the plastic off, grab bricks so they could throw them through the store windows. You want to tell me that's not orchestrated? There are evil forces working to destroy this country. Ultimately, Satan. And you get into your nutcase people that follow along that can be used by him and they don't even realize it. But there's the spiritual battle that we are in. And if we don't fight back with spiritual armor that comes from God, we're going to lose it. That's what I'm talking about here. That's the whole point. And I'm just giving you two little stories. I mean, there are so many more. If we really knew what was going on, we'd all collapse on the ground and go into the fetal position and just go, that's it. It is ultimately a spiritual battle. And that's why we read in Ephesians 6, put on the whole armor of God, that you might be able to stand against the deceits, the trickeries of the devil. We're not going to win this on a human level. We're not going to win it with human laws. That should be obvious because we already have human laws, man-made laws, that we're disobeying. We've got to follow what God says. Violence is filling this nation. It's filling it today as I speak in 2022. Let me give you some more statistics, and these all come from this year, from May, June of this year. Listen, across the country, this is June 7th. These are news reports that I took and copied down word for word. More than a dozen mass shootings over the weekend leave at least 17 dead across the country. 17 shot and killed in mass shootings in one weekend. One weekend in June. Buffalo, New York. 10 people shot and killed at a Tops supermarket. No doubt you probably heard about that one. Philadelphia, this is May 20 of 22. Philadelphia businesses are closing left and right over increase in shoplifting. Lawlessness. Increase in shoplifting. 15 to 20 stores are closing because of shoplifting, rampant shoplifting. San Francisco is closing 10 Walgreens due to rampant theft. New York City, quote, drugstore shelves empty amid shoplifting surge because of the downgrade of theft to a misdemeanor of $50 or less. So those in authority are downgrading what the crimes are. The people are looking at it and go, oh, that's not that big of a crime. Boom! So they're going in and they're emptying the shelves. They go in sometimes with trash bags and just push it all in. Crime is running rampant. The Department of Homeland Security put this out in June 7th, 22. The Department of Homeland Security warns of a violent month ahead, monitoring risks of domestic terrorism and foreign adversaries. Fox News headline, U.S. murder rate highest it's been in 25 years as big cities shatter records. 2021 ended with several cities, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, to name a few, reporting upticks in murders. On and on it goes. May 25th, the NPR reported 27 school shootings have taken place so far this year. It's May. 27 school shootings. The U.S. has surpassed 200 mass shootings this year. They're reporting this in May. 200 mass shootings. Now, that's not just school shootings. They defined a mass shooting where 4 or more people were shot and or killed. 4 or more people shot and or killed. That's what they defined as a mass shooting. And they're saying it's almost the end of May and already 200 have taken place across the country. This stuff is so mind-boggling that our eyes just glaze over when we hear it. Every day we turn it on and it's almost like, what's new? What's only one today? I guess things are getting better, huh? That's what happens when there's so much going on. That's what happens. On and on and on it goes. Move with this violence throughout the nation. School violence. School violence. This is one that we're all sensitive to. A new federal report looking at crime and safety in the United States says, quote, school shootings in 2020 to 2021 rose to the highest number in 2 decades. School shootings now. The National Center for Education Statistics released a 31-page report that said, quote, there are at least 93 incidents with casualties at public and private schools across the United States in 2020 to 2021. 93 incidents. That was an uptick from 23 the year before up to 93 in 1 year. School violence. Sandy Hook, Newtown, Connecticut. 20-year-old Adam Lanza shot and killed 26 people. 26. 20 of them were children 6 and 7 years old. How do you do that? Uvalde, Texas, we're all familiar with that. Shooting in an elementary school. 19 children and 2 adults killed. It marked the 27th school shooting that year, this year. 27th. We sit back and we hear this, and I talked about this in the last part 2. How does a person get to such a position in their life, in their mind, that they can walk into an elementary school and shoot over 20 people and take little children, 5, 6, 7 years old, and kill 20 of them, 25 of them? I don't care, 1. How do you do it? How does your mind get to that condition? How can you be so desensitized to taking a human life that you can do this? Now, I don't want to, and I wanted to say this a few times throughout the series, because I don't want to put all the eggs in one basket. I think that there's a number of factors that play into this. I don't want to simply say it's a rejection of God, and that's just the whole thing. I think there's a number of things come into play here. Number of what's going on in a person's life, what's going on in their family, what's going on in their social life. I think there's all things come into play. But I definitely believe that the bottom line foundation is we have gotten away from God. We have taken God and His laws and we've rejected them. I believe through the teaching of evolution, where we believe that we're just a product of chance, that there's no real meaning and purpose to our life. We haven't been designed by God. We're not created in the image of God in the sense of having his. I explained what image means before. It's not just simply physical. That there is no creator, that there is no God that we have to answer to, that there is nothing uniquely precious about human life because we are created by God. Getting away from all of that, that life just becomes meaningless. The person's own life becomes meaningless, and the life of other people that they're going to take is pretty much meaningless. So it plays the major part. I think if that foundation was still there, that these other things wouldn't be happening. There's a lot of things that come together, the broken homes and all of these things. So I don't want to eliminate them, but I think the primary thing is taking away God. I mean, I grew up, when I was growing up, and many are growing up, we're talking 50 years ago, there were guns. There were guns available to people. You never went to school thinking someone was going to come in and shoot people. Were there problems in the home? Was there a divorce? Was there people committing adultery? Not on the level that you see today. Society was never perfect, but things were a lot better, and there was certainly a sense of morality. And there was certainly, to whatever degree it was, a respect for God and for his law. There was certainly the belief that, hey, if I do whatever I'm doing, one day I'm going to answer to God. When I die, I'm not just going into the ground and that's it. I'm going to stand before a holy God and have to give an account of what I've done. That was there. And that had the effect, even though society wasn't perfect, of reining us in and giving us a different moral compass. When that's gone today, look what results. Look what happens. Look where we're at. We're just spiraling downwards faster and faster and faster. These horrific statistics just keep coming and coming and coming. How can you go in and shoot little children like that? And I don't know that I think there's an answer there. We're talking about God, but I can't comprehend how a mind gets that calloused, gets that hard. That you can stand there and stop and reload and still keep pumping. Well, if I'm nothing and you're nothing and I die, you die, we're all going back into the ground. We're not going to answer to anybody. Nobody's going to judge me. I'm aggravated. I'm upset. I don't like what's going on. I'm done with life. Because most everybody going in there and doing these things, they pretty much know their life is over. They're done. Some of them kill themselves, and some of them know pretty well they're going to get killed. I'm just going to take a bunch of people with me. What's really the big difference? And you think it's wrong? Who says it's wrong? Everyone does what's right in their own eyes. Or, I don't care that you think it's wrong. I don't care. It's what I want to do. I make my own decisions. I make my own law. I do my own things. And I'm aggravated, and I'm taking a bunch of people with me. This is what we are reaping because of what we have sown. That Ten Commandments thing just keeps coming back into my mind. I had really forgotten that they said that. That, you might read them. You might meditate on them. You might respect them. And wow, almost like God forbid, you might obey them. That's what we have sown. Don't read them. Don't think about them. Don't respect them. Don't obey them. That's what we got. That answers what we've got. You throw in all of these statistics and everything going on here, and more and more and more are going to keep coming. There's your answer. Throw it out the window. America without God. We are reaping what we have sown. And I'm only halfway through here. I'm only halfway through. I could probably end right there, but I want to look more at society and where we're at and what we're doing, because you know what? It's getting worse. Satan hasn't stopped yet. He hasn't pushed us as low as he wants to push us. Lord help us. Lord help us. And the next part, we're going to continue on to see Satan's attacks on this society. May God bless you.